The 12th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Kathy Wyatt.
Initially, this was a site that we all thought it was a cool idea for Harvard students, and it was hatched in a dorm room with the idea that maybe a few people at Harvard would use it. But a ton of people, 6,000 people at Harvard signed up within the first 3 weeks. So we made the decision to expand it to other schools to see if it was going to work there as well, and it did, almost magically so.
Almost magically indeed, as millions of faces now appear on this social network worth billions of dollars. Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, Facebook. Joining us to talk more about it are Adam Tima, a professor in the School of Communication at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, Mike Johnson, Director of Operations for Infinite Solutions, and Robert Patterson, Assistant Executive Director of Kids Can Community Center. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Sure, thank you.
Welcome to the program. Dr. Tima, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
Sounds pretty elementary, but what is Facebook?
Not an elementary question at all. Facebook is a way for families to get together. Facebook is a way to find your friends. Facebook is a center of nostalgia, and Facebook is just kind of the latest trend in this idea of social networking, where we just, for some reason, we are drawn to this idea that we need to be connected to each other. You know, sociologists have been talking about it, philosophers have talked about it. It's the next step, I think. So. Okay,
and as with everything else, this has a history, and it's kind of fascinating. If you could talk to us a little bit about that.
The thing that we have to keep in mind is that the original Facebooks were actually these books that either students were handed when they walked onto a college campus or professors were handed, that basically had this photo along with a name and hometown and interests, things like that, so the chance for you to know who these people were. Facebook in its current iteration, it started off in 2004, as the clip said, basically for the students of Harvard to get together and literally compare notes about classes. And, you know, hey, do you have this textbook for this class? Because I want to, I don't want to pay for it, and those kind of things. It quickly expanded to the Ivy League schools. It then spread across the East Coast. It then involved anyone with an EDU address, so anyone that a college student could access it. At a certain point, a decision was made for it to go public, and not as in they're going to sell stock on it, but public as in anyone could join this thing, which is when the explosion in the numbers have kind of happened over the last couple of years. So from 2004 to 2009, it's expanded exponentially, and the numbers, I don't think we can actually fully track how quickly it's grown.
Wow. And Mike, we have a graphic kind of showing how this works, but just kind of walk us through the whole process here.
Well, a lot of how Facebook works, as he was saying, was that it works on the idea of networking people together. It's kind of neat in the way that you have what's called your wall here. What that allows you to do, it allows you to keep in track with your friends. It shows short little blurbs as they post things like, oh, I'm feeling like this, or I'm doing this right now. It allows you to keep track of them in an easy place. It also allows you to share with other people. Like if you were to do your own, it allows you to share with your friends as far as that goes. And on the other side there, it also has a few different sections that you're allowed to do, such as it has some of your applications, videos and pictures, because Facebook's actually the largest photo collection on the internet right now. So it's past Flickr and all the other ones like that. And there's also the applications, which are kind of, I guess, games, calendar appointments, things that outside developers have developed to use on Facebook.
Wow, and there's no limit as to who can log on to this. You just need an email address, from what I understand, correct?
That's all you need, and to be over 13. And if you're between the ages of 13 and 18, you actually have to have a high school or junior high email address. Other than that, anyone can get involved.
And pretty simple. You just log on to facebook.com and follow the instructions.
Yep, pretty simple. Probably get it done in less than 5 to 10 minutes from the start to finish.
Wow. And Robert, before we started taping this program, we were talking about, just some practical latest and greatest uses for this, and Michael Jackson came up. Tell us a little bit about how all of that unfolded when the world was learning about his death?
I think, like a lot of people, this is probably one of the first events in history where we heard about this monumentous event, not through the phone, not through network television. It was through text and Twitter and Facebook. And I know that's always kind of been a part of what we do, but to me, this was kind of the seminal event where it pretty much brought the internet to a halt, from what I understand, or certain applications. And to me, there's probably just been nothing like that before.
Okay, and Dr. Tima, you said, as a news hound, that you were not only going, looking and going to Facebook, but you also had your televisions on.
Sure.
So tell us what's obviously the immediacy is there,
Yeah.
but what are you noticing when it comes to big stories like this?
I think it's the immediacy. I think that's actually the aspect that we have to look at the most, that's the most significant part. We can find out about things now. When it was network television waiting for the breaking news to come in, when it was the newspaper, when we were waiting for the morning or evening edition to come out, even on the radio, there was this kind of lag time whenever something actually happened and we heard about it. With this age of cell phones and smartphones and mobile devices where I can take video of an event, throw it onto my Facebook account, throw it into my YouTube account, and instantaneously the world can be watching it, this idea of immediacy where we are informing each other versus the news informing us, I think is the biggest change that's occurred.
Okay. Which, as a news person and a communications expert, does that concern you at all about credibility and facts? If we're all exchanging information, generally you would go on to your favorite local news or you'd CNN or whatever the case may be. Talk to us a little bit about the differences there when we're communicating person to person.
Right.
How credible is that really, and are we going to get caught up in things that are not necessarily accurate as a result?
This is a conversation that's going on in newsrooms and it's going on in classrooms. Basically, the idea of credibility is, can someone who has never gone to journalism school, has never worked in a newsroom before, can they be considered a credible witness? Can they be considered a credible reporter? One of the questions becomes, which way is the news going now? Are we going more, removed from the notion of objective news to even activist news agencies? Are we moving towards something where there should be a side to the story versus just the facts? That's going to be a question we're going to have to wrestle with for some time. The technology is there. We can't put the genie back in the bottle, as the saying goes. We have to work with what's out there. I think it's going to be up to us as critical media consumers to really say, okay, yes, TMZ's reporting that Michael Jackson's dead. I'm going to wait until I see it from 3 or 4 different sources. I'm going to wait until CNN's reporting on it. I compare that against MSNBC. I'll go to the BBC's website. The beauty of the internet and the beauty of things like Facebook is I can go anywhere at any time. And if the BBC's talking about it, it's made it across the pond, and now they're talking about it. Okay, maybe something's going on here. So it's up to us to really critique what we're seeing, I think.
Well, and as with anything else, the bottom line is consider the source.
Absolutely.
And go from there. Now, Robert, I know that you are using this both professionally within your organization, and obviously you're a user of Facebook yourself. How did you get connected with all of this? Remember back, and how did you first find out about it?
It really wasn't that long ago. I was actually in New York on one of my trips last year, and I met some people, and they wanted to share photos. I'm like, well, here's my email, and they're kind of like, oh, we're not going to email you, huge megabytes of photos. We're going to put it on Facebook. And from what I knew, it was still a college thing. I knew it was going to be more accepted out there. So by the time I got back to Omaha, I created a Facebook account, and sure enough, began sharing photos, and then we kind of snowball from there, as it did with a lot of people, I think.
Sure.
Okay, and you use it from a professional standpoint as well.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about how you've utilized Facebook from a marketing standpoint.
For the Kids Can Community Center, we realized that, as a lot of nonprofits do, we're trying to reach out to the young professionals or the young people to kind of cultivate the relationships for future donors and to get them involved. That's always been really difficult for any nonprofit. And we realized this Facebook opens up the gates and lets us communicate our message instantly, quickly, and easily. And I compare it to like the direct mail. Direct mail, you send thousands of pieces out. Some people look at it, some people go in the trash. You never really know. Facebook, we just have instant feedback on what we're doing.
Okay, excellent. Dr. Tima, what's going to happen to those organizations who aren't utilizing a tool such as Facebook then? Will they suffer, or just based on their marketing strategies already, be just fine?
Honestly, I have no clue. And the reason I say that is because if you've adopted the technology, then you've already recognized probably a cost benefit to it. You've already said, okay, it's going to cost less to send out a message via this Facebook. Now we have the initial startup having and repeated cost of having internet access and the technology. But if you can, get your clientele on Facebook and your clientele submitting the information, then yes, it's going to work. But if, say, your clientele doesn't have access to technology, if they don't have the money for it, or whatever the case may be, they decided, I'm not going to go online because I don't want to go online, then that marketing strategy may not work. So you have to really think about, who am I trying to talk to here? And if from that point of view, it doesn't make sense to go that direction.
Okay. And Mike, one of the issues that comes up from both a personal perspective and a professional perspective is privacy. Talk to us about the privacy here and the information that is exchanged.
There's a couple things about Facebook, actually. There's what's called a public profile and a private profile. A public profile will be viewable by anyone, and a private profile is only viewable by people that you allow to view. That's from a perspective from the profile. From the information they actually collect a decent amount of demographic information about you. And in downloading a lot of the applications, you are agreeing to be able to allow the companies to use that information. So there are some terms of privacy and whatnot where they're not going to willy-nilly just give your information away, but it is theirs to use.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about, you do have the prerogative to say who's gonna log onto your site and who's not. What are some of those terms? Fans, some of the other things that I've heard. Tell us about the invitation process in bringing somebody into your circle.
Well, there's a couple different ones. There's a individual invite where you kind of just invite one of your friends. You'll just do a quick search for like their name, their email, and kind of break it down like, okay, they're in this city. Because if my name's Mike Johnson, if you search for Mike Johnson, you're gonna get a whole lot of results. But Mike Johnson, Omaha, Nebraska, then you can kind of break it down a little bit more. He's this old, he went to this school, whatnot. The other way that actually helped me a lot was the group invitations. Because I actually grew up in Europe, and I found out from one of my friends that a lot of people from my old school actually were on Facebook. So I look at my AIS group invitation. I graduated in '96, and because I have friends in Australia, South America, scattered across the country, and Europe, and it helped me really connect with those people again.
Okay, excellent. Dr. Tima, I know there are several other options out there available for folks. Tell us about Facebook's competitors.
Okay, so the one people are aware of most is probably MySpace. MySpace started a couple of years earlier. Similar to Facebook, it's your standard, you join it, you start a profile page, you can have friends. MySpace started as a way for people in the Bay Area to get basically to exchange stuff on music. That was the whole idea at the beginning. But then it became a social network site, became an online social community. MySpace kind of has hit its apex and it's on its way down. It looks like there's more and more users leaving than are joining. And it looks like, and I kind of look at it and say, at what point did it turn from being a social networking site, online social community, to become more advertising, less community? And so I think that's going down. There's other sites, there's Zanga, there's a couple that are made for children. I can't think of the names of the ones dealing with you basically log on and become a penguin, but it's basically for children to get used to using these social communities. So there's different ones out there. Facebook is by far the fastest growing. It's by far the leader at this point. I think any not demographic marketing analysis you look at will say that it's definitely the one that people are trying to beat. But I think it's going to have a life cycle. I think it's going to also apex out, and at a certain point it'll start going down, and the next one's going to come in.
Which, interestingly enough, then, what is the next one coming in? What do you forecast there?
I know we were talking about this before the program, and I think it's going to be it's going to take it from just text to mobile or to video. I think almost every mobile device that's come out now has a video option to it, and chances are it's got either a phone or it has web access. So all I need to do is pull my phone out and say, hey, guess what I'm doing today, blah, 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 there it is, and I post it up to my Facebook, whatever it becomes at that point. And then people put video responses to it. I think that's going to be the next step. I think it's going to be a lot more live feed. We were talking about before the show with when Michael Jackson, during the memorial, Facebook had on CNN, you'd actually had a live feed of commentary going. I'm sure there was Twitter commentary. I'm sure there was other commentaries going on as well. So I think that's going to be the next step, is where it's less asynchronous, where the time is, where I post something and someone else posts something, and then it's going to be more synchronous, where everyone's kind of doing it continuously.
Okay. Mike, any additions to your take on the evolution of this whole
Yeah,
thing?
actually, from a technological standpoint, that's a good point, that more than likely it's going to come about via video. One thing that has to happen before that, though, especially in the United States, is we have to improve our broadband
Yes.
infrastructure, because in a lot of countries such as Europe or Japan, you have much faster internet connections than we're willing to put up with here, unless you're looking on the West Coast, like Los Angeles or New York on the East Coast. They have a little bit better internet, but you get to like some of the rural areas, a lot of like the stimulus money now, I believe like 50% of what they're looking at do increase in broadband is going to be in the rural areas, where there's a lot less adoption as far as high-speed internet. And as far as MySpace goes, actually, interestingly enough, I think part of the reason that MySpace has got such a decline is it's a lot more complicated to set up a site as opposed to Facebook. There's to personalize it, there's HTML code sometimes, and it's not very user-friendly from that perspective. And also the fact that Facebook has what's called a developer network, where they have allowed outside companies to build applications that run on their network. So that's like, okay, well, Facebook isn't doing this, maybe someone builds an app that does it for me. So it's a lot more, I guess, user-friendly. It's more of a pull as opposed to a push, where where MySpace is like, you're going to use this. This is what you have. Facebook's more of like, well, we'll allow outside people to modify and use it how they want.
And thank you. I'm glad you brought up the technical side of things, because there is a concern from where people sit. We have all of this up and coming stuff, and we have all these people wanting to use it. At some point, and this may seem like a silly question, but do we run the risk of crashing and burning when it comes to the big picture with so much going on? Are we really ready for everything that is coming up here? I'm curiously.
As far from a technological standpoint, I'd say yes, because they've actually increased quite a bit as far as data center capacity, which is basically the back end to pretty much all your major search engines like Google, Microsoft Bing. All those have large data centers with thousands of computers that are running. And actually, one of the big concerns is actually cooling. So where people place their data centers now, like Microsoft is putting one up in Scotland, just because the climate's a little cooler. Google's looking at putting them out in the middle of the ocean. They now come in big containers, like ship containers, because they're easy to configure, and it's easier to say, oh, we're getting a lot of hits. Let's just drop another ship container full of servers in. So it's pretty interesting on what they're doing on the back end to facilitate things like that.
Wow. Better you on all of this stuff than me, because I'm fascinated by all of it, but it's good that you're on the side of that. Robert, I did want to ask you about the evolution. What's your forecast for the future of
I just log in and use it. I don't know any of the back end stuff, but I kind of believe kind of what Dr. Tima says, that to me, my phone, as a lot of people, that's me in my phone now. It has my let alone the texting and the phone, but my email, my GPS when I'm driving, kind of everything I need is now becoming my phone. So pretty much I think that's everybody's going to be completely tethered to that. My only concern is some of the more of the privacy issues. I know last year the Facebook had some ownership, they changed the ownership rights, or that became kind of a big deal of when you post a photo on Facebook, is it yours anymore? Is it now? Do you relinquish that to Facebook to use with it as they want? And I know they backpedaled a little bit, but I'm not sure. But that had a lot of people concerned at the time.
Okay. Dr. Tima, do you want to add anything to that?
Where's it going? I think at a certain point we're going to hit kind of this critical mass, and I think it's going to almost streamline out. I think at a certain point, and most technologies do this, we'll go from all these things going on, and it just kind of funnels and funnels and funnels and funnels, and then it becomes this one thing. And I wonder if that's the direction it's going to end up going at some point. Now, what the one thing is, I don't think we'll see it. But at a certain point, all these different technologies and these different MySpaces and Facebooks and YouTube and all those are going to converge at some point. And we're seeing it now. I think we're seeing it in the mobile devices. Mm-hmm. I think we're seeing it in, Sony has got a new PSP coming out, but it's going to have the mobile capabilities of basically a walkabout web browser. but you also are gaming on it. But then you're gaming, but you have your community stuff going simultaneously. So I mean, but if we take that, add to it a phone, and if you put Skype on it, now you've got basically a web phone that you can use on your PSP, which you're gaming on. So I think we're gonna start seeing things shrink down and streamline at a certain point.
Okay, some of this can become, admittedly, overwhelming in a hurry. I mean, there is a lot going on out there for people to be up to speed on. I would say that I think more of the older adults in all of this, but I don't consider myself one, and I'm still a bit overwhelmed by it all. So what would you tell people who really do want to become actively engaged in this, but are a little bit reluctant because there is so much going on with it? What would your advice be to those folks?
Take your time. Don't jump on the first generation of any technology. Just sit back and see how it pans out before you go, full steam into whatever tech you want to get into. If it's Facebook, if at a certain point, I know there is talk. My brother just had a child a few months ago, and we're trying to get my mom on Facebook. Why? Because we don't want to have to send photos all over the place. Rather, get mom on Facebook. She can watch Owen and whatever the case may be at any time. We're also trying to get my grandmother on there. She's more receptive to it actually than mom is right now, which I find intriguing. But I think as the information comes out, ask questions. Don't hesitate to ask questions. And again, just take your time with it. You're going to get worried about something. Guess what? 18 months, something's going to change. The next iteration's going to come out. So just kind of let yourself slowly get comfortable with it.
Well, and Robert, when you think about this, and you do talk about the older adults, computers can be intimidating in and of themselves, let alone all of these options that are now available to us. So I know you work in the senior realm. What is your advice to those folks out there saying, I want to communicate more with my grandkids, but gosh, I don't even know the first thing about that? What are you telling the folks with whom you visit?
I tell them to stick to the basics. Set up your profile, set up the basics that you need, and you could just have the 3 friends that is your family, or your neighbors. That's all you need. You don't need. I guess you see people with thousands of friends, and that's not necessary. You don't need to open yourself up. And then the only other thing I kind of give to people, especially as an employer, when people are coming to interview for jobs, more employers are looking. They do a little search for your Facebook. So and perception is reality. If I go to your Facebook and every picture, have a beer in hand. To that, I'm like, what's going on here? I mean, everything you put out there is open to the public, so something to think about.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to spend the last portion of the program talking about how all of this impacts not only the present of communication, but the future of communication. When I was a kid, we picked up the phone and we called somebody and we talked to them. Now we've got kids that are picking up iStuff and all the rest to communicate, and instantaneously, if they want to send a message, if they're thinking about something right now, they can send it right now. Whereas back in the day, we had to wait till we were able to get to a phone and that kind of thing. So I really, Dr. Thema, want your take on what this is doing to our younger generation when it comes to communication in general.
I don't think we know yet. There are studies upon studies upon studies that are coming out right now. And they've been coming out the last couple of years in the academic journals, and I think we're seeing them more widespread. Some of the educational policy stuff and things like that, and some of the just how do we teach to students who are digitally inclined, to what one newspaper called the digital natives. And one thing that, as far as communication is concerned, and I always chuckle with my students about this, I bring up, I don't ever want to see LOL or JK or something of that nature in a paper that you hand in to me to grade, because though that is the language you use in your texting or in your email on your IM, guess what? That's still not the formal language that we're using, in society at this point. But language changes. Language is just a bunch of symbols thrown together, right? And so at a certain point, we might see it. I'm not saying it's going to happen in the next 20 years, it could be in the next 100 years, but we could see things shift where our language starts mimicking one another, where it's not one set of codes that we use to talk to people on our text and one that we use when I'm having a conversation with you face to face. But I still find it humorous when someone says LOL out loud. If we're talking face to face and they say LOL, I say, really? Because you're not laughing. You know, it's one of those strange moments that you have, but it really does happen. So
I must admit, I'm guilty as charged.
The what?
I'm guilty as charged. I'm forever saying LOL or things such as that, just because I kind of grew up with the internet. So I'm kind of an internet nerd. So I'm constantly the things you're talking about. Now I'll write a professional email and I won't think anything of it because that's how I type. You know, I say JK instead of just kidding. You know, it's just an everyday thing for me.
And admittedly, for those of us of the old school, it's very concerning when we're not using punctuation and we're not using capitalization, and yes, we are using abbreviations. But you touched on something else too, and this is something that is of concern, I think, is that face-to-face. We've got a generation that's so used to texting and typing things in. What happens to the face-to-face as a result? You know, we're opting out by using technology, and we're losing track of the personal side of that, and that admittedly is concerning to me. What would you say to that?
I don't think it's going to ever go away, unless you believe what the movie WALL-E presents you with you know, people sitting with a visor and all they see is the things that are broadcast to them. I think we're still going to have face-to-face communication. Now it might change. Face-to-face might be where, let's say, someone's working, because the idea of the 9-to-5 work shift has to an extent gone away as well. I mean, that's starting to move away. So if I'm working late and I want to say hi to my family, I might jump on my webcam. You know, and they might, I'm like, hey, I just want to say, hey, I'm going to be at the office late. That kind of deal. How did school go today? So the face-to-face might be there, but it's going to be a different kind of face-to-face. Okay. It's going to be a different type of thing. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know, but that could happen. If people are, as opposed to people just kind of in their text mode the whole time.
Well, admittedly, and as I've referenced, I have not joined the Facebook crowd yet, but I believe that my time has come after today, and I will, of course, keep you all posted as to how that goes. We do have some information that we want to put up for the viewers. This is what the screen looks like. And so if you just log on to www.facebook.com, you'll be able to check that out and then just kind of follow things accordingly there, and you yourself, if you have an email address, can log on. And then we have one more graphic. Okay, so facebook.com. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it, and I will keep you posted on my progress. Thanks to you for watching, and we will see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at untv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.